We were at the Springfield Museum of Art at a solo show of Paul-Henri Bourguignon, and it was fantastic. It showed up almost 100 works of his. I want to thank Kim and the McConnell Arts Center of Worthington, particularly Kim and Mitch, who's still working on the audio and stuff. So it worked fine at home this morning, and it may work later, may not. And Kristen Coomer, who worked out the logistics here. First, I'd like to know why you're all here. So how many of you have heard of Paul or Erika Bourguignon? Gosh, a lot of you. Okay, good. And some of you have never heard of them, right? Yay, okay, good. So did anybody know Erika personally? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great, great. Okay, and the rest of you heard about it from the Lifelong Learning Institute here at McConnell? Yes? Fantastic, all right, good. All right, oh, except for my husband who long-suffering just comes whenever I ask him to. All right, let's get straight to the documentary. I can't actually read other than standing right here. It was filmed after Erika's death in 2016 by Production Partners Media, Inc. It was a labor of love by the videographers Scott Spears and Christina Paolucci. Stand up there, Christina, in case anybody has any questions. It took about 3 years to complete. So the documentary is 38 minutes long, and I'll answer questions at the other end. After that, we'll take a little intermission, and I'll show you some examples of Paul's art, and we'll talk a little bit more after that. Okay, does that sound okay? Okay, questions so far? Good, good. Now, let me see if I can get it started.
I think Paul's legacy is one that he shares very much with Erika in the story of who Paul was and how he made his art, why he made his art, and how Erika supported him during his lifetime. And after Paul's death, she continued to cherish his art. So the legacy, I think, is really one of the perseverance of art in its importance in one person's life and in the life of that person's spouse, and I would say on a community. And that's a very rare and unusual thing.
So Erika's legacy is amazing. It is not only her anthropological work and her research in voodoo, altered states, women's studies, religion. She was an exceptional scholar. She was an early pioneer in the field of anthropology. She wrote hundreds of books, articles, reviews, but I think her true legacy would be the students she inspired and she taught to think.
When I think of Paul and Erika, I really feel like they are a groundbreaking couple. At the time that their careers were expanding, they really upended the typical stereotypes and gender roles that were in place in mid-century America.
Paul-Henri Bourguignon was born in Brussels, Belgium in 1906. He had a very early show at a commercial gallery in Brussels when he was about 22. And according to Erika, it sold out, or it almost entirely sold out. So he had success as a young man.
World War I ended in 1918, but the conflict left Belgium in a mess. And because of that, Paul began to travel wildly. So he went outside of Belgium. He went first to Paris and then Spain. He went on to discover North Africa, explored Yugoslavia, Italy, Corsica. He recorded what he saw in photographs, and he took his little box of pastels around and he started to paint the countryside with pastels.
He doesn't go back to university until about 1934. And then he is studying at the Free University of Brussels when he goes into a graduate program in art history. And that's when he developed his research on the Spanish painter El Greco.
And then World War II intervened and completely, overturned his life as it did that of millions of other people.
And Belgium had actually been trying to remain neutral. But the Germans invaded Belgium and overran Belgium in May of 1940. And like all able-bodied men in Belgium, he was conscripted into the army and ordered to try to get to France to join up with the French army and fight on the side of the Allies. And Paul and other men of his unit kept running into Germans and not being able to get across the lines. And eventually they had to go back to Brussels, which was then occupied by the Germans. And it can't have been easy. There were shortages. There was a lot of tension and fear. Brussels was not saturation bombed like some cities, but it was not a calm or easy place to spend the war.
During the Nazi occupation, there wasn't a lot for Paul to do except for work. So he kept himself busy by writing books and collaborating with respected Belgian expressionist artists. Alice Fry illustrated his book about the 7 days of creation that he wrote during that time.
In 1940, he had been a reporter for the National Telegraphic Association or Organization of Belgium. He actually did reporting on the last days of the war. He reported on the Battle of the Bulge.
So for a time, Paul also had a small gallery at a seaside resort town where he showed his own work next to progressive artists. Belgium after the war, it was just not a pleasant place to live. Belgian economy was in disarray. So many Belgians, including Paul, they were afraid that another war was coming. Life was really anxious there.
Eventually, though, he decided that he was interested in getting out of Europe.
In 1947, Paul accepted an invitation from a former colleague to visit Haiti. So he persuaded his newspaper to support his trip in exchange for a series of travel articles.
Erika was born in 1924 in Vienna, Austria, into what would be regarded as a very stable, middle-class family.
Well, they were a Jewish family living in Vienna. In the 1930s, they came to realize that life was going to become dangerous. Her father was a lawyer, her mother a doctor. She was an only child, and they finally decided they had to leave Austria.
It was a matter of considerable alarm for Erika's father, convinced as he was that the Nazis would be in Austria at some point. He said they took over in Germany, they're going to be here. So not long after that takeover in Germany, he set about trying to find a way out for the family of where to go. And it took, from that point, it took 6 years. They finally arrived in the United States in 1939.
So Erika and her family were actually very lucky. Most of her immediate family was able to get out of Austria.
That if they were able to get to the United States, they were going to be fine. I mean, they knew a lot about the United States. They knew they would have they'd be safe, they'd have an opportunity. They would be fine. Desperate, really desperate to get here.
So on her father's side, her aunt and her uncle, who was a physician, they committed suicide before others in their community were gassed in mobile gas chambers. On her mother's side, she lost an aunt and a cousin who were transported to a concentration camp. They didn't survive.
She didn't want to call herself a Holocaust survivor because she didn't think that was what she was, but as a refugee, I guess.
But she ended up in Queens, New York, which is considered to be perhaps the most diverse community in the country.
She was 15 when she arrived, and she knew very little English, but as a young person, she was able to pick it up rather quickly.
And she ended up going to Queens College for her bachelor's degree.
The most formative experience at Queens College was a course with Hortense Powdermaker. The course that Erika took with Hortense Powdermaker really ignited her interest in anthropology, because Powdermaker wanted everyone in the class, mostly first, second generation Americans or immigrants, to write a paper on a minority with one caveat: don't work on your own minority. And so Erika picked Italian. She said, I knew nothing about Italians, but from the literature, Erika was discovering that the kinds of things that she and her family were going through in terms of adjustment, in terms of understanding the differences between themselves and mainstream America, were not unique. These were the experiences of other immigrant minorities like Italians. And that was a very considerable breakthrough for her. She was very well placed as someone aspiring to be an anthropologist. One of the opportunities she took advantage of was to take a course at the New School for Social Research, where the great French anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss was teaching. Also in New York, she had met a man who was very instrumental in her going to graduate school at Northwestern. His name was A.I. Hallowell.
She studied under Hallowell briefly. She was a field researcher in a Chippewa Indian reservation in Wisconsin. Then after that, she began studying with Melville Herskovits. Herskovits thought getting a master's degree was a waste of time. Erika went directly from an undergraduate program to a PhD program.
And so she did her doctorate at Northwestern University. And Franz Boas had been the founder of American Anthropology and established the first academic program at Columbia University. And he trained Melville Herskovits, and then Herskovits trained Erika.
Hallowell decided to return to Pennsylvania. So he returned there. Erika stayed in Evanston and began working with Herskovits. And that's how she got to Haiti. Got a grant and basically told her that she was going to do field work in Haiti, and that's how she developed her interests there.
Paul arrived in Haiti in May of 1947. Erika arrived in August of 1947. I believe that Erika and Paul met very shortly after she arrived in Haiti.
He was to leave. He did not leave. He stayed. She stayed and did this field work. She was 23 when they met. And I just think it's a fabulous love story.
He had already been there for some months, and so I think he kind of became one of her sort of guides to getting around and to seeing different places, things. And I think that was also part of what brought Paul and Erika together, is that they were both, in a sense, strangers in a strange land. In terms of trying to imagine what his purpose was, I think it was to find a new life, to try something different, to be somewhere else. And he did some reporting on Haiti and on the region. He was, by this time, taking photographs. And I think that she realized that his photographs could be very useful to her research, or maybe they both just wanted some sort of an excuse to travel together, to look at things together.
So Paul didn't paint during this period in Haiti. He considered himself a writer and a photographer. He took a lot of photographs. Erika published quite a few of them in her books over the years. Then she archived them in the Ohio State University's Knowledge Bank. Erika did a lot of work in Haiti. She conducted interviews with Haitians, including with school children. She collected their drawings of what was important to them.
You can't be in Haiti very long without learning about what is popularly called voodoo, but of course the real way it's said is vaudun, and spirit possession and trance. And she began getting interested in those things, and that set the trajectory for her career.
As far as I know, she's one of the first people to study possession trance in Haiti. And instead of trying to scare people with what it represented, she showed its historical origins and its value in that society.
So the different kinds of roles that the voodoo priests and priestesses played in the culture, and also observing and finding out about how sort of trance states worked. And that became a basis that her research went on from for decades.
Which sounds kind of, to most Americans, pretty bizarre. But in fact, worldwide, spirit possession is part of normal behavior. It's part of the cultural setting. And so individuals who are possessed by spirits, that's part of the culture.
While Erika was finishing up her fieldwork in Haiti, Paul traveled to Peru. And that was in August of 1948. He stayed 15 months in Peru. He traveled around, he took photographs, he wrote a book there, and he also, of course, he corresponded with Erika.
Erika left in the summer of 1948 to go back to Northwestern and return to her graduate studies. And then in 1949, she was offered what was originally supposed to be a temporary position teaching at Ohio State.
Erika came to teach a class for 1 quarter at Ohio State and ended up staying 41 years.
So this is 1949, at a time when there were just a handful of anthropologists. And so she's one of the founding members, really, of this department.
So she was 25 and had all kinds of students that were going to college on the GI Bill who were, older than she was. She talked about how she needed to be, pretty tough and pretty firm to be respected as a teacher.
Many of Erika's students were men back from the war on the GI Bill. And they were older than she, and she was tiny. So she had to inspire them to listen to her, with respect and to learn. It must have been enormously challenging.
She was hired as an instructor, and being hired as an instructor means that it's not a permanent job. But then she was promoted to assistant professor, which is a tenure track position. She got tenure and progressed through the ranks to associate professor with tenure and then ultimately full professor.
And also the only woman to ever be the chairman of our department.
She was the chair for, not a real long time, and then she went back to teaching. But when she started, it was a combined department that was sociology and anthropology, and it wasn't until later that there really was an anthropology department. And she was, one of its sort of founding members.
Yes, she would be considered to be a cultural anthropologist, and her specializations within that field would be psychological anthropology and the anthropology of religion. And then she developed this specialization that would have to do with women.
As an anthropologist, she studied the psychological makeup of people in different cultures, looking for similarities among people all over the world and for differences among people all over the world.
But her whole life was anthropology. She was always doing anthropology. And she gave a lot to students, especially to graduate students. She was an amazing advisor to a lot of people.
She would be able to engage with students wherever they were. So people would ask questions from all over the map, and she would somehow manage to make sense of it.
She was very challenging in her seminars. She would ask you questions you didn't want her to ask because you really needed to you need to study everything before that class.
I guess she also had this expectations of students that they would grow in their thinking over the quarter.
I certainly wouldn't be who I am, for better or worse, without Erika.
Erika actually was very instrumental and very involved. She was part of a committee called the Committee on Academic Excellence for Women. She was one of the founders of that initiative that really tried to work with the dynamics of women getting through degrees, because they often would be older, they often would have children, and so she was trying to work with some of those issues to facilitate women being more successful.
When I was working for her as a graduate assistant, she once got a postcard requesting a reprint of an article she'd written from a shaman in Siberia. I was really floored. I said, Erika, look, a shaman is asking for your input. She just shrugged her shoulders, says, oh yeah, that's normal.
Erika left an important legacy in terms of methodology. She did field work, but she only did field work in Haiti early in her career. However, from that point, she did a major comparative study, which was a big contribution to methodology, where she used computerized programs to analyze a large body of data to look at this issue of possession and trance. Then from there too, you have the women, the fact that she really established a specialization in women.
She often said that her life story, her life history, and her becoming an anthropologist were kind of a seamless unit, because anthropologists are continuously looking at the differences, the cultural differences around them, and trying to assimilate them and trying to understand them. And that's what she was doing as an immigrant before she'd ever heard of anthropology. As long as people are working on spirit possession, religion, psychological anthropology, she will be a touchstone. She will be a resource of great importance as a scholar for people who would never have had the privilege of knowing her. But it's her work, her wonderful record of publication that endures.
He started taking art lessons while he was a teenager. I think studied with actually some pretty significant Belgian academic artists.
He never went to formal art school. He did not attend, an art academy or anything like that. And one of the things that was unique about his style that these artists observed and his teachers observed was he often represented things in ways that were different than they appeared in reality.
So here he had painted a picture of this house, and he had painted it yellow, and he thought it was one of the best things he'd ever done. And his teacher was outraged because the house was white, and how could he have not painted the house in his picture white.
And so his use of color and the way he conveyed scenes and images was really different.
I think first break with total representational realism of what he sees, and changing instead to truth to what he thought seemed right.
He was very aware of what was happening in Europe in the 20s, 30s, and 40s and 50s, and he sort of picked up then in the 50s and was trying it out, trying each one of those different styles on for size to see what fit him, to see what he liked.
The thing that impresses me the most, it starts out, the very earliest pieces are very Matisse-like. He did a lot of figurative things, and they're all nice. He did a lot of landscapes, and they're well done. He has a broad variety of work, but you can always tell who did it.
He was able to sort of leave one idea and move into another idea, not get stuck somewhere as a painter. So yeah, I admire the whole idea of moving forward and then being able to break away and try these different things, not being stuck in a place. That guy was not stuck, for sure. His work demonstrates how much he just wanted to keep moving forward as a painter.
His early work was in pastel. So he decided there weren't enough colors in the box, that when he got to Columbus, Ohio, he threw them away. He then painted in gouache, which is kind of an opaque watercolor. He briefly tried oil painting in Peru, but it took 3 days to dry. In the 70s, he switched to acrylic.
It's what you don't put down, right? It's sort of where you finish, what you leave, and he had that too. He'd leave a lot of ground, he'd leave a lot of space.
And everything he did has that. It's just enough. I don't think he ever overworked anything.
He was pushing many different boundaries, and he worked in many different media. There was everything from graphite drawings to paintings, large scale, small scale. They were just very compelling. He was capturing the essence of humanity.
His work mines all kinds of different versions of modernist art that sort of straddles that line between being recognizable and not being recognizable.
Every time we look at the painting, we see something a little different that we hadn't seen before, a little speck of color here, a little squiggle over here.
I think people respond to the very human quality of Paul's work, whether it's something joyous happening or whether it's something pensive. something that sort of takes you into another realm, an area of thoughtfulness. I think there's an accessibility about Paul's work that's very appealing to many people. At the same time, it feels modern.
I think his style is very, very, very informed by European modernism, far more than by American modernism.
Paul really doesn't come to pure abstraction until the very end of his life in the 1980s. And it's a really interesting phenomenon, though, that even in Paul's most abstract works, there is still usually the title or something that he picks out in the work of art that connects it to the human story, the human drama, a mother and child, a person, a religious figure. They're interesting to look at. They engage you without assaulting you or without making you feel too uncomfortable.
The paintings just make you feel good. I mean, they cause me to stop and want to reflect on Paul and his journey and his experience and through his travels and the people that he met and the things that he saw. I guess I have an appreciation for how he chose to depict that.
I know the difficulty in making good renderings and what goes into it and how much thought goes into it and how much measuring goes into it. If I'm drawing your face, I need to lay down points on my paper to sort of get an idea of that. But for somebody to put a pencil down and slide it around and pull that off, it's pretty extraordinary.
And I really love his abstracts. When he goes so far abstract that he really got into this almost fractal or geometric little tiny marks. His way of applying the paint was very different in those. The greater degree of abstraction appeared as he matured as an artist, as he got older.
He started exhibiting in Ohio in the 1960s, so he exhibited in Columbus, in Iowa, in Canada, but most notably, this is the big deal, he had a big solo show at what was then the Columbus Gallery of Fine Arts, and that was in 1964.
But I don't think he promoted his work very much. And it wasn't until after he passed away that Erika went to great efforts to do that, and she was very successful with that.
After Paul's death in 1988, Erika continued to promote his work. Gallery 5 was the big step. Lynn Muskoff was a fantastic advocate. His work started to become known and collected in Columbus.
Lynn Muskoff, she was the pioneer in trying to promote Bourguignon.
We were very impressed with the art and, very impressed with his whole the history that we were able to get at that point in time. Really, other than René Seidel, we were the first ones to really give his art exposure in Columbus. And we really sort of brought him to light, I think, among the art collecting population.
Lynn had advertised in a art magazine for the first time, very expensive ad. I subscribed to that magazine and I opened it up and saw this and immediately went down the next day because I wanted to buy it. I didn't want it to get away from me. And she wasn't open. So I went across the street and had a cup of coffee and watched her shop until somebody finally came and opened the door, and I rushed over and said, I want to buy that.
He was just, I've got to have that painting.
And I didn't want anybody else to have it. I didn't want to share it with anybody.
He was one of the most prolific painters that I have ever encountered. And his range of style and his range of skill were both expansive.
Erika arranged a major retrospective at the Schumacher Gallery shortly after Paul's death. There was another one at the Richard M. Ross Museum of Art in Delaware. This is the best one, though. She exhibited Paul's work in New York in 2006. After Gallery 5 closed, then, Erika began exhibiting Paul's work at Art Access Gallery in Columbus. Soon after, Alt Gallery in Sedona, Arizona was interested in showing Paul's work. And then Ventana Fine Art in Santa Fe. That first week that he was at Ventana, 26 pieces sold immediately, just like that.
We have a very international crowd here. A lot of people from all over the world come to Santa Fe, and they have responded very positively to his work in our Ventana gallery.
His art was shown in Cleveland, Toledo, Akron, and Cincinnati. Within 20 years of his death, his work had been exhibited in 50 shows. Quite a few museums, including a museum in Brussels, began acquiring Bourguignon work for their permanent collections.
He probably said early on, I'm a writer, I'm a journalist, I take photographs, but I really want to paint. And that must have, there's a romance about a painter.
I think that their lives really are an example of the possibilities that can happen when we step outside those stereotypical relationships. It allowed Erika to pursue a fabulous career as a faculty member over the span of 4 decades, and it also freed up Paul to create a massive body of work that is a real treasure for us to this day.
That somehow this always seemed like it was a romantic relationship, that there was a lot of love. She obviously had a lot of love for him. They didn't really entertain a lot. They didn't go out a lot. Most of their life was within that house.
So I sort of think of it as this house where, you walked in the front door and suddenly you were somewhere in Europe.
They talked French to each other. They held on to some degree of Europeanness with each other that they really couldn't have pretty much anywhere else. Paul would collect things and do his paintings, and she would come home and they would have wine or sherry or tea. I think their home life was really kind of a refuge for both of them.
He liked to tease by showing me his painting and saying, what do you see here? Well, there's little circles and there's little dots, and oh yeah, there's a profile there of somebody.
It was wonderful. He had a very wry sense of humor. The best memories I have of Erika and Paul together is because I would see Erika at class and at school, and she was very professional. And then I would see Erika and Paul together, and he could make her giggle so easily. He would just say little things, and she'd giggle, and it's like, what? Professor Bourguignon's giggling?
Well, I had the same impression every time I walked into that house, not just the first time. It's overwhelming. It was like a museum. There were sculptures and tapestries and paintings and objects all over the place, everywhere you looked. So you could sit there in one chair and look around the room for hours and see things that you'd never seen before.
And it was just filled with Paul's work. It was always this presence. He was always there.
Walking into Paul's studio was like a time capsule, and you could almost imagine him sitting there. It was the most wonderful experience.
I remember her showing us the north bedroom where he painted, and after he died, she never touched anything. It was exactly the way he had left it.
They clearly had just this great life together. It was just an amazing house. In some respects, it was a house where the clocks stopped in 1988 at Paul's death. But in other ways, it was a house that continued to grow. Erika was constantly, I think, thinking about having conversations with Paul, looking at his work, not letting things stagnate and become dusty. I mean, she was constantly thinking about what can I do to introduce Paul, to keep Paul's life and art vital, today.
So Erika, early on, when she realized what a big project this was, got a lot of help. That's why I would stop and see her quite often, because she wanted to talk about what she could do to get Paul's work out there. She didn't want it to sit in her basement and then have something happen to her, and then what are we going to do with it?
I mean, she was on a mission to make this work known.
She planned several exhibitions every year across the United States. A high point was exactly 50 years after Paul's
first solo exhibition at what was then the Columbus Gallery of Fine Arts. Erika began working toward a second show at the Columbus Museum of Art.
Erika really saw this as a chance to do something really important for Paul, which was something she had always wanted, and that was another retrospective at the Columbus Museum of Art, and it was a source of tremendous joy and satisfaction to her.
I can't even tell you how much that meant to her, because through her it meant Paul. You know, that was something she was doing for Paul. And I think it was one of the things that really helped her live the length of time that she did. And she always talked about the fact that you have to do things that get you out of yourself, and that was what made life meaningful and gave you energy.
Following the museum show, the Columbus Museum of Art show exhibition, I think people were thrilled. They were thrilled for Erika, they were thrilled about the work, they were delighted the museum participated. It was just gratefulness on all sides, and what a tribute.
All of her students were there from 20 years ago or 30 years, it didn't matter.
The legacy is what you go and see and are able to observe. They left something behind that you can still appreciate, and the tangible thing is the art that's hanging on the walls in the galleries and people's homes and in museums.
I see his work as timeless, and again, because it's so figural, it's about humans being with other humans, and it's about showing us where he lived, what he loved, he has shared with us, so I find it to be timeless.
When I talk to people about this exhibition, I talk to them about the diversity in the work, there's different genres and different styles of work here that really tell Paul's story.
So when I first started representing that body of work in about 2000, he already had a following of people. She'd be so excited to know that how much of the work is sold and how much of it really is out in the public.
Paul's body of work provided us a really unique opportunity because it was a window on both Erika's work as an anthropologist and also his work as a fine artist.
I think in a way, Erika and Paul were similar with their life's work. As an anthropologist, Erika did not judge or sugarcoat her subjects. And Paul didn't sugarcoat or idealize his painting subjects either.
He's different. He's just unusual. He's unique. He's one of a kind.
I see happiness in his paintings. Every time we look at it for the first time. That's what art does for me. Or it evokes a different kind of emotion, or you get a different perspective. And that was kind of the Bourguignon moment for us.
There are over 100 galleries here on Canyon Road. There's probably over 200 galleries in Santa Fe itself.
This is the second largest art market in the United States, behind New York City.
I consider him one of the great masters of 20th century modernist theory and practice.
It fits. It fits. We got a room full of people in there, you know, looking at it for the third time.
This is a wonderful story of a man who was very worldly, but did indeed live here in Columbus, Ohio.
And I think that Paul's work will be looked at 50 years now. I'm sure it will.
Paul's legacy is his artwork. He's represented by multiple galleries. He's in collections and museums throughout the United States and in Europe. And Erika's legacy is that she is a world-renowned anthropologist, a stellar teacher and scholar. She was a mentor to so many people, and what they accomplished is going to live forever.
So she has a legacy of these former students all over the U.S. So there is quite a crowd that has followed her.
Erika and Paul's lives are examples of what becomes available to us when we are open to the possibility of different roles, when we are open to the possibility of exploring cultural heritages that are different from our own, and also when we open up our minds to immigrants, because both Paul and Erika were in fact immigrants to this country, and their European heritage really enriched their lives, and when we allow ourselves to tap into that, our lives are enriched as well.
I don't know about you, but it makes me cry sometimes. Gosh, any questions? Do you have any questions? Yes?
Where is that house in Columbus located?
That house is at 193 East North Broadway Street. It belongs to 2 other people, but we picked up Paul's studio and we moved it to the Ohio History Connection, where it was installed as a permanent exhibition to this day.
Where is that?
That is what the Ohio Historical Society, that was what was called there. It's now the Ohio History Connection. It's off of 17th Avenue and the freeway.
I thought the house looked familiar.
Yeah. Other questions? I must say, Fred Fochtman, you did a fantastic job on this. Yes. Phenomenal artist. Okay, I know you have some other ones. Other questions?
How did you get involved in this project and your relationship?
Okay, so I lived across the street on North Broadway, and a mutual friend said, you've got to meet Erika. So I did, and this was about 2000, maybe 1998, something like that. And I was busy working and doing a lot of stuff. And she hates this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So we did a few things socially together, and I was enamored with her. You know those strong women in sensible shoes. I just really loved everything about her. So we talked at social things, and then one time, about 1999, I think, she got really sick, and all her organs shut down, and she was not expected to live. So she was at Riverside, and I went to Riverside to say goodbye, and I tiptoe up to her bed, and she's all in white, sleeping. I thought she was dead, and I tiptoe up, and she says, "Jane, what am I going to do about Paul's work?" So I said, well, Erika, I'm gonna do a business plan for you, and then we're gonna go make a charitable trust out of it, and I'm gonna go talk to your attorney this afternoon, and he's gonna do the papers tonight, and you're gonna sign them first thing in the morning, so don't go anywhere. And she said, okay. And so that's what happened. And so she got better finally. And after 12 years, we worked together every Saturday, no matter what I was doing, whatever she was doing, we worked together and we worked toward that business plan every Saturday morning for tea and cookies. It was great. And then she didn't have any kids. She had no relatives. So I continued to do the shows with her and help her with stuff. She died, I don't know, she died in 2016. So many, many years after I first met her. It was cool. Thank you. Yes?
Where else will we find some of Paul's work?
Oh, well, that's Scott. Scott is the other documentarian with Christina there. He did a fantastic job. So, Art Access here in Columbus represents Paul's work here. And they sell 40 or 50 of them a year, maybe between $2,000 and $4,000 a piece. Same thing with Santa Fe and at Ventana Fine Arts. They sell maybe 40 or 50 a year. They're also in Cincinnati. There's a gallery there that handles him. One in Toledo, and Sedona, Arizona has a few. You can always go to Paul's website, because he has all the artwork listed there for sale, or a bunch of it anyway, and you can contact me through that website. So it's always available. Yes?
He seemed to be extremely prolific.
You know what? He was extremely prolific. So, he didn't, he came here in 1950, and he spoke French, a little bit of English, but he didn't have a job. And Erika wanted him to be the great artist that he was. He sold a few paintings, but he didn't care about that. So she did the money, and he did the painting, and he painted all day long, every day. So yes, he was extremely prolific.
How many paintings did
About how many paintings did he do, I am asked. A whole bunch. I told Erika before she died that I would sell 500 of them. And I have sold 465 so far in the 10 years. I told her I would do it in 10 years after she died. I've still got a year or two to go. So that's kind of the answer for you. Yes?
Since he was so prolific, tell everybody about the basement.
Oh. Have you been down in that basement? Yeah. Okay. So the basement, you what?
I've heard a lot about it.
Oh, cool. Come and talk to me after we're done. So the basement is where she stored all the work, and she had racks made, and they were all slipped in these racks. And she had flat files, and they were all in flat files. And she kept it dehumidified, and it was all organized, and we could find anything down there that we needed. Now, this is the great part of story that chills me to this day. So after she died, the woman and man that bought the house, they were young, they were in their late 20s. They fell in love with Erika's story, and their names are Anna Klatt and Phil Thibodeau. And she's going to be my trustee after I croak. And all of Erika's work, a lot of Paul's work, still live in that basement because I've put it all back down in there. And she's going to keep it in perpetuity until, 40 years from now. So she'll have a second life or a second act after she's done working. She's amazing, big thinker, big strategic thinker. Is that what you wanted to hear? Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay, good. It's a great basement. Yes?
I have a question about how you or whoever decides which of his artwork is going to be, you're going to try to sell.
Okay, so the question was, how do I decide, and it is me usually, what we're going to sell? And it's, Fred can answer this too. When you look at a body of work, some things work in a different market and some things work in Columbus, Ohio. Like Santa Fe is more sophisticated than Columbus, Ohio, although Columbus is getting pretty good, So some galleries want landscapes and that's it. And some people want abstracts. And so I can pretty much tailor what he has to whatever the venue is. And also a lot of it is whether it's framed and cool and I like it, if that makes sense. Yes, exactly. Whether the colors go with a particular couch, right. Although he would hate that, he would never paint for anybody's couch. He painted for himself. Yeah.
So he seems very productive and disciplined. Is there any read on how fast he produced a given work? Was it a day, a week? If you take that and take his lifetime, you could come up with a total estimate.
Yeah. So the question was, how long did he take to do a piece of work? So sometimes it was minutes, sometimes it was hours, sometimes it was days. Sometimes when he finished a piece of work, he would put a little frame on it, and then he would put it on a little stand, and he would ask everybody who came into the home, what did you think of that? And then sometimes he would tear it up, and then he would do it over, and then he would do it over again, and then he would do it 20 times. Erika used to say that somebody said to her, oh, isn't it nice? Paul it must be so relaxing painting all day. And she just rolled her eyes because she said it was an enormously intensive experience for Paul. There was nothing relaxing about it. He worked so hard at each painting. And you can tell, these paintings are finished. Finished. There's no little extra details lying around. And like Fred says, you don't know, that's the hardest thing when an artist works. When is it finished? Well, he worked it over and over and over, tore it up, did it again, tore it up, did it again, until he knew it was it. And then when he was done, he signed it. So that still doesn't give you an idea of how many paintings there are, but there's a lot. Okay.
How do you get a deceased artist's work in a gallery?
So yeah, how do you get a deceased artist's work in a gallery? That is a really important question, and very, very difficult. So I did this business plan for Erika, and it was to photograph the work and catalog the work and get it to a gallery, just, one little gallery, get it listed on a few sites, get a website up. Gallery 5 did a great job at doing it, and once one gallery does it, other galleries follow. And, the work actually spoke for itself. So everybody's got Aunt Nellie's work in their attic, and I think it's really hard to get Aunt Nellie's work in a gallery. Paul's work was real difficult for the first 5 or 10 years, but people are getting to know him and collect him, so that's helpful. I don't think that helps you any, does it?
Not really.
Yeah, right. It's an enormously difficult experience to get work into a gallery and into a museum, by the way. Museums don't have room for storage. They don't have room for Aunt Nellie. I'm just going to say a couple more things, and then we'll take a little break. Then we can talk more about his art. But I want to say, I've been working with the Ohio History Connection, the Ohio Historical Society, for those of you who know that. And I've been saying, I don't want Paul's studio to live in a museum with a bunch of old other white dead artists, okay? Because that's what they had in their collection. And I said, let's work on the collections. Let's, meaning you guys, not me. But let's work on the collection, and let's come up with a storage idea, because artists don't have a place to store stuff. These people are 80, 90, 100 years old, these artists here in Columbus. Museums won't take more than 1 or 2, if that. So they are building a multi-million-dollar storage facility, not because of me. I mean, I'm sure somebody else had the idea, but a multi-million-dollar storage facility for artifacts and art, and it's going to be a great big deal. So in a few years, artist, can go put their stuff there. Yeah, Christina.
That's what's being built next to the highway.
Yes, that's next to the highway. You can see the construction. It's pretty. It's so exciting. Meanwhile, a bunch of guys, Fred and 3 other guys, they go there regularly every month or 2, and they look at the collection that the Ohio History Connection has, and they lay out, the staff lays out 100 or 200 paintings, and they go through them, and they say, that's good, that isn't, that's worth keeping, that's not. And oh, this is somebody that they know from 1922, because they know everything. Oh, these guys know everything. And so it helps bring academic excellence to their collection. So Ohio History Connection, it's going to be big in a couple years. You watch for that. Any other questions? Yes? Oh yeah, so all the money that, the other thing, I told Erika that I would sell 500 paintings before 10 years, and then I would make $1 million. And she says, oh, come on. I said, yeah, I'm gonna make $1 million, and we're gonna give it all to the Columbus Foundation in Erika's Charitable Trust. So I've done that. I've made my first $1 million. I'm working on the second $1 million now, getting close. And so that all goes to the Columbus Foundation, and that furthers the visual arts in Columbus. And where is Kim? Kim, I'm told that this screen, to replace it, would be about $3,000. Erika's foundation is going to give you that, just so you know. I'm not allowed to choose too much. But every once in a while I can write a check, so there you go. Okay, let's, oh yeah, one more.
The artwork that is at History Connect that is deemed not to be
Yes.
Is that for sale?
It's called deacquisition. So what that means is they put it up for auction usually. You know, some of it truly is Aunt Nellie. You know, somebody's watercolors that we don't know why it's there. But there's nothing that's great that's being right. It's just other stuff. Is that correct, Fred? Yeah. Okay.
It's sort of a collecting place for people who are sort of, you know, downsizing, and the institution was fairly open to taking that artwork in, and then they accrued massive sort of trove.
Right.
Now you're sort of reevaluating it to see if it's relevant to Ohio.
Well, and whether it's in good shape. You know, some of it's mildewed, some of it has water damage, you know, from the original owner. Okay.
What's your background that you were able to come up with this whole business?
Oh my gosh. So I real quick, and then we're going to break. Real quick, I graduated from CCAD, Columbus College of Art and Design, and then I worked in ad agencies for 10 years, and then I was art director at Columbus Monthly for 5 years. Then I went into publishing and worked at McGraw-Hill for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. In between, I had my own graphic design business. So I took 13 semesters of art history, for example, because it was an easy A for me, you know, and because I did it in the summer and I did it some in high school, and, you know, so I knew some of this stuff. So it was kind of fun. Okay, all right, y'all, let's have a 10-minute break and come back and we'll talk about art specifically. Thank you. Okay, good. These DVDs are for sale up in the lobby for $15 if anybody wants one. The DVD is the documentary plus these images of paintings, plus a little short one of Paul and a little short video of Erika. Okay. So again, I missed the first one. He did it as a teenager. Gosh, these are going so fast. Sorry, it's just not working. I'm sorry. Just a second. All right, this was done as a teenager. That's all I'm going to say, because it's going to go quick, maybe. Nope, it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, you know, he studied with some impressionistic painters that were really well known, and they used to go to the countryside and paint plein air just like this. A reviewer wrote this for the Columbus Dispatch. She wrote, "This work is more than a visual memento of a place that has taken the artist's fancy. It is essentially a prophetic sign, an enticement to adventure. Note that the lightest and the most colorful parts of the paintings are off in the distance on the other side of the bridge." And this painting is in the permanent collection of the Ohio History Connection. All right, now I'm going to start the video, or the loop. Come on. Oh, that scared me. Okay, now it's going. Okay. Mostly I won't say a lot about most of these. So this is a clown in 1927. Paul painted it just a couple of years later than the bridge. Note the elongated face, dark outlines, and this is reminiscent of Flemish Expressionism. He includes, and you'll see them, dark outlines around his work for a few decades. This next one, Couple with Dog from 1925. And Paul was just 19 when he painted this. This is the first painting we have that shows his attempt at whimsy, and you'll see a lot of whimsical things in the next few minutes. This is Marseille, the Old Port, 1958. So Paul had begun traveling by this time, and he recorded quite a few scenes right out the windows when he traveled, and this was a houseboat. This is wooden horses on a carousel, but you could see he changed the eye of one of the horses. So it's another painting that shows whimsy. All these were in pastel. This is in pastel also. This is called Waiting, and it's in the style of Gabriel Munter, a pioneering German expressionist artist who worked alongside Kandinsky. Painted in rich colors, simplified forms, bold lines. This is the next one. The next one is Rome, the Colosseum, from 1937. It's also an example of these dark lines. He used shapes just like building blocks. You know, you can see his feelings on display. The essence of the buildings are strong and powerful. St. Paul, 1930. This hung above Erika's dining room for years, so the eyes were the most important feature, of course, similar to Modigliani. The balcony is interesting. This one is in the Museum of Ixelles in Brussels, in their permanent collection. So this was a very early painting of Paul's, probably done when he was in his 20s. Note this little yellow spot up at the top, which was right here, which draws your eye straight to it. I want to say something about her. He didn't paint idealized portraits very much, but she's one. I think she's gorgeous. In the Andes was one of two paintings that he painted in oil. And, you know, they're big, juicy oil paintings, but he hated oil because they took 3 days to dry. So he was way too impatient for that. This is called The Last Canvas. And there are so many questions about it. You know, why is the artist facing away from the canvas? You know, where is he going? Can he not see the tree that's above him? I mean, what's going on? This is in the permanent collection of the Columbus Museum of Art. The next is an example of his drawing style. It's simple, it's so simple. And he was enamored with the brevity of line. And the next one has a lot of whimsy too. It's called What's for Dinner? I wish there were more like this. This was from 1955. Still the line, but less strong, I guess. The next one is called Village in Flanders, and it has a heavy line. Again, heavily influenced by Flemish expressionists. Their subjects were simplified and often outlined in black line, and Paul's early work often had those characteristics. So this is the closest portrait that that he ever painted. He called it the Florentine, but it's clearly a portrait of himself. And it's similar to a portrait that Picasso did years ago. It's now in the permanent collection of the Artists' Archive of the Western Reserve. This is another example of Flemish expressionists in a landscape with the line. It's in the permanent collection of Columbus Museum of Art. This next one is called Innocence from 1955. So here the dark outline is grayed out. It's an example of softer to portray Paul's feelings about a Haitian child. I think it's beautiful. This Italian town, also a good example of the influence of Flemish expressionism, strong outlines, simplified shapes. The model from 1957 that's coming up is extremely reminiscent of Flemish expressionism. You know, the artists, the Flemish expressionists, they depicted ordinary people doing ordinary things. The colors and the figures, they were all simplified. This next one, it's called At the Opera, 1951. It's an example of Paul not prettifying his subject. I'd love to know who he was thinking of. I love her. I don't know. He maybe didn't. The next one, again, is Flemish expressionist-like, but it's also reminiscent of George Rouault. In the late 1980s, Rouault was apprenticed to a stained glass maker, and so he had light shining through his colors. And Paul did too. He was very influenced by stained glass and the cathedrals in the cathedral in Brussels. The Red Sail is one of Paul's travel paintings. It's in the permanent collection of the Nelson Atkins Museum. The Veil, 1952. It's one of the few drawings we have where Paul idealized the figure and made her beautiful, because he just didn't do that. The next one, The White Dress, is 1951. It's the first painting Paul painted when he moved to Columbus. It's reminiscent of Matisse's language of color and drawing. You can see that in him, right? It's appropriate that Paul began his painting journey in the United States with a style that begins mid-century modern, the mid-century modern movement. So it's now in the permanent collection of Ohio History Connection. The Open Window also is in a Matissean style, and it's in the permanent collection of the Nelson Atkins Museum. So elegant. This one is called The Witnesses, 1959, and I think it asks more questions than it answers. I don't know, witnesses to what? And why is their expression so benign? You know, I don't have answers on that. I wish I'd asked Erika before she died. So this is a woman with black hair, 1958. It's in the collection of Museum of the Artist Archive of the Western Reserve. It's a wonderful example of fauvism. Matisse was one of the founders. It sought to produce a sense of light and shadow without traditional shading. I'll talk about her in a minute. It was shocking at the time. Fauvism was the most influential to Bourguignon's artwork. So this lady's just a lady with a hat, right? Similar to Modigliani. This next one, Evening Antwerp. He painted it in 1968. It has the essence of Brussels. You know, it has Brussels had a moist atmosphere, you know, gray and, you know, rainy. But the city was shining jewel-toned. This apostle is also, again, in Modigliani's style. The next one is Face in Blue and Green, 1969. And you can see the strong fauve influences. You know, who paints paintings, and he would never paint paintings with flesh tones when you could paint it in blue, right? I'm not sure if he was influenced by Picasso's blue period. Might have been. Busy Street is in the permanent collection of Columbus Museum of Art. Paul was captivated in Haiti by the endless streams of women going to market with head loads, and they went on and on. They were as far as the eye could see. Real quick, I want you to see this. Very fluid lines, but the shadows are totally square. Who does that? I mean, that is amazing. That is master work. Can you see that? Did you see that? Okay. All right, this is just a simple painting that portrays innocence. And similar to that, in drawings, Paul tried to use to get the most information in a few strokes. So this is just 4 figures walking, 1967. In the next one, Girl with a Secret, 1960. Modigliani wrote, "When I know your soul, I'll paint your eyes." So Paul also had a thing for eyes. Erika used to joke when hanging a show that the eyes competed with each other, and she couldn't hang a portrait next to another if the eyes didn't get along with each other. Which is true. This gray dress here is pretty interesting because it's almost monochromatic. I think that's masterful. It was 1967. The next one, the green dress, 1966, is the essence of a figure with just a few strokes. Again, just the essence of a figure. The next drawing is just another example of just a few strokes. Women going to market. The next one is of a drawing of Judas. It shows two faces of Judas, and you see if you can catch them. You see them? You see the both of them? Yes? Yes. Paul was very affected by Cubists, showing different perspectives in one painting. The next one's an expressionistic view of Paris from 1968. The city shines and the courtyard is filled. So that's how Paul thought of Paris. That was his feeling about Paris. And here is another expressionistic view of Paris with a different feeling, still busy, but a very different feeling on a gray day. So he was more interested in painting feelings, not depicting a scene. Feelings, that's what abstract expressionism is. So this is three women in Morocco. She painted it in 1966. It's in the permanent collection of the Artist Archive of the Western Reserve. Here the landscape is bright, and the women are dark and mysterious. Mysterious. Nice, France is the opposite of that. It's a beautiful city on the Riviera, and Paul painted it as he felt it in 1964. So this is in the permanent collection of the Nelson Atkins Museum. Next one's in the park, 1968. More women going to market while men watch from a bench. You know, he painted these for decades, these women in white dresses. He couldn't get them out of his mind. Yep, Haiti. This is, artists through the centuries have painted chairs without people in them. They used to be props, and then Picasso painted some, Matisse painted some, Van Gogh painted some. In this painting, Paul's turned one away, one aside. So instead of focusing on the seat, you focus on the shape of the chair, which is kind of cool. It's kind of an inherent mystery. This is another landscape painting during the 50s and 60s, still outlining the shapes. This one, same thing, outlining the shapes. This one hangs in the president's office at Ohio Westland Museum in Delaware. The Richard M. Ross Museum in Delaware, Ohio. That's part of their collection. This one is in the permanent collection of the Columbus Museum of Art. And he did that one in 1964. This is another Haitian drawing. Just emphasizes the character of the face. Goes back to not prettifying the subject, as is the next painting called Attitude, 1973. How would you like to hang her over the mantle? She's for sale, so let me know. The next one is a woman with basket. As part of Paul's remembrances of Haiti in his 4 decades of painting. And this next one is also of Haiti, Cafe Scene, 1970. So in this next one, you can clearly, again, see Fauvist influences. Pretty cool, huh? So in the 1970s, Paul begins painting abstracts, and here's an early one, Chinese Landscape, 1975. This one was in his dining room, if anybody remembers that. The next painting, this little section ping-pongs through stuff. This is called The Chuckle, 1976, and he was more interested in capturing the essence of a person rather than selling or making a beautiful painting, like I've said. This is called Girl Talk from the early 1970s. And he did a few of these. They're kind of cartoony. This one is, this captures the colors of Haiti. It's so bright. It's even in the rain, and I believe this one was in the rain, but subtropical light, very different. This is Girl Talk, 1972. I love this one. The eyes are amazing. We're almost done with these, by the way. This is a particular style called Wonderheads. He didn't call them Wonderheads, but collectors did. You can see pieces of newspaper and stuff in there, and they're just full of the wonder of life. This one, I believe, is one of his strongest paintings of Haiti ever. It's called In Her Room, 1972. This is also really important. This was the frontispiece of a series of paintings. He painted the Via Crucis, the Way of the Cross. And he painted Jesus before it was fashionable to do so as a Jew, and clearly human and clearly suffering. I think it's hugely powerful. This is another bar scene from Haiti. It was interesting that everybody from all different colors hung around together, and they didn't really notice the colors. All they would talk about, he's the dark-skinned one or the one that looks yellow. They would explain who the person was by color. This is another Haitian one. Notice she's turned away, but it's the bright colors that are outside of her, from behind her, that he emphasizes. This is a painting of Port-au-Prince. This is another Wonderhead called Surprise 1987. Wonderheads may have been influenced by Paul Klee's childlike and radical paintings. In this genre of Paul's, his dry humor also shines through his artwork. This is a schoolyard in Haiti, 1975. He was enamored of the school children in Haiti who wore white dresses. And he did quite a few of these. I'm going to talk more about these later, but he did a series of beach paintings or seascapes. They're very small, and they pack a lot in there in a little size. The Singer. This is in the permanent collection of the Springfield Museum of Art. And I don't know about you, but I could hear her singing. This is called Tropical Sun in Haiti, 1972. So, he was impressed with the sun. He was impressed with the women going to market. He enjoyed painting their white dresses, their loads, the movement, and the sunshine, and this just brought all of it together. Same thing here. This was in 1973. Haitian village. This next one's a Wonderhead called Anticipation. And I don't know how he came up with that, but I'll just let you enjoy the next few on your own without too much to say. Pretty strong. Arc de Triomphe. This one's called Beauty. Not sure why she doesn't have a chin, but he must have thought her beautiful. This is Lair Benjamin. Again, beautiful, beautiful colors. This one just makes me happy. Yellow Bird on Black, 1981. This is Brussels, 1980, just a flower stall in the middle of the square there at Le Grand Place. Another cafe scene from Haiti with all different colors of people. Zagreb, Croatia. There's what's interesting in this one is there are a lot of little pencil lines in here. He went after he painted it, he went and, you know, did a few things with pencil on top of that. Gave it some definition. So this is an abstract called Colorful Crowd, 1982. His abstracts were always about what he saw in the painting. And this other one is also named The Crowd, and so it's another crowd. This is named Ready to Dance, 1985. We got 2 minutes to go, just so anybody keeping track. This is also called The Dance, and this is the only round one that he's ever done. And I think he used his palm, or his end of his finger, or his hand, to do some of these shapes, because you can see the veins in his hand if you get up and close. This is The Dragon, 1983. I think you've seen this one before. If you have, you can enjoy it again. 1976, Fragmented Head. This is called The Glance. And again, everything is about the eyes and until the rest of the painting just kind of disappears on the edges, which is kind of cool. This is called Head in Orange and Green, 1981. It's a wonder head with a lot of fauve influence. And here's another bar scene, actually, but another fauve influenced bar scene. This is called Like Mind. I love it. It's kind of like Mr. Spock, you know, mind melding, if you know what that is. Here's two more wonder heads that show Paul's whimsical humor. This one's Striding Man. And this next one's named The March, which I don't know about you, but it made me feel like Monday morning. So sad, going to work. Another travel painting. This is Milan, 1980. I mean, you know, clearly he's taking liberty with the color, but you know where it is. If you've been to Milan, you know what it is. There's another wonderful wonderhead named Mr., 1981. Another travel painting. This is a Moroccan street scene from 1981. So he enjoyed being in exotic places, you know, where he didn't understand the food or the language. It made him happy. And he certainly liked all the robes that people wore in different places. This was actually a big one, Head and Torso in Red from 1980. The next one, The Scientist, 1983, incorporates bits of magazine in the painting. I love it. Now we go back to Haiti. This is named Sisters. 1980. And then one more Wonderhead. Oh, two more. This one's named The Stair. It's kind of scary. He did do some scary paintings, you know. I didn't show many of them here, but there's some named The Scream that would make the other Scream look less screamy. I wonder if that's in response to the war, you know, or whether he just had it in him. I don't know. This is named Striding, 1982. And we've got two more, I think. Ah, they're not, no, it's moving. There it goes. Okay, this is two figures in landscape, and this is 1982. It's in the permanent collection of the Schumacher Gallery. And this was on the cover of the Greener Grass book that he wrote. And then the last one is the Green Abstract. Not sure why this is going so slow, but there it is. So, you know, abstract expressionism was born with Jackson Pollock, kind of. There was actually somebody before him, but it was painted in the 1960s. And Paul dripped water, he used spatulas and other kitchen implements, he pressed bottle caps into the paint and then onto the paper. Similar to Jackson Pollock's paintings, Bourguignon's abstract artwork was full of passion. It was the experience of painting, you know, the experience of painting, not the painting itself that excited him, if you can understand that, okay? It used to be that paintings were how well you can represent a tree, but here is the experience of a painting. As well as asking the viewers what they, you know, their opinions about what they saw in the painting. So I could go on and on, I'm not going to. How are we doing? We're just a couple more minutes. I want to say just a couple of things. One is back to Jesus, the frontispiece of the Via Crucis. Those were made into a hand-bound letterpress book. Here, you can see it there. And they were individually printed and individually bound by a company a letterpress company in Worthington. And they sell for $85 if anybody wants one. The poems that are in here made me weep. They were done by Edward Lenz, the recently deceased award-winning poet, Edward Lenz. And where's Debbie? So Debbie got a bunch of Ed Lenz's poetry. You can say it. Do you want to say it?
Yeah. If anybody is interested, I have copies to sell of Edward Lenz's poetry, liturgical poems. We titled it The Bronze Serpent, and it was a long time poetry poem. And at the end of this book, 16 of Paul-Henri Bourguignon's drawings are included, and the colors that go with those drawings were written in response to the drawings. So if you're interested, they retails for $12 and I'm selling them for $10.
Right, $10, cheaper than $85. But this is beautiful, just so you know. But so is that. When I first saw these drawings, I actually cried a little bit. You know, I'm not religious particularly, and I'm not. I don't care much about drawings because I had 13 figure drawings in my life, figure drawing classes in my life. But these drawings, they were just so powerful. So see Deborah Fleming, if you're more interested in that. Paul painted, to answer the person's question that was sitting there, hundreds of paintings, and he explored almost every nook and cranny of mid-century modernism. He rarely exhibited his work while he was alive, but since his death in 1988, Erika worked hard to get his work out there. There have been more than 50 solo Bourguignon shows and galleries throughout the country. The Columbus Museum of Art featured his work in a solo show in 1964 and again in 2015, and his work is in a dozen major collections in museums in the US and in Europe. As I said, we just wrapped up a major solo show at the Springfield Museum of Art last year, and I told you that 5 galleries represent his art. Almost lastly, not quite, for more information about the artist, please see www.paulbourguignon.com. And I have a personal request, and this is shameless. Erika and I started Paul's Facebook page in 2012, and last December it was seriously hacked by someone who named it wireless handheld vacuum cleaner. I have no access to it or all that content. So after jumping through Facebook's hoops for 3 months, without any success, I repopulated a new page for Paul, much more securely, by the way, and I'm just starting now to get followers. I have about 50, and I need 50 more before I can even see my dashboard, because that's what Facebook does. So if you would not just like Paul's page, but go to the 3 little dots underneath and follow him. I swear I won't spam you. I would appreciate that very much. Paul's also on Instagram, which wasn't hacked. Okay, so that's the end of my plea, and I really appreciate a couple of follows. Any other questions? Yes. Okay, the next show coming up in Ohio, there's 2 of them. I think in the fall we're going to have one in Cincinnati of just Haitian work, but Art Access in Bexley, if you know that gallery, is going to have a show in the fall, and we don't have a date yet, but it'll show 100 heads and figures, and they're all ready, framed and ready to go in Art Access's basement right now. It's going to be a fantastic show. If you were on Facebook, I will make sure that I talk about it so you could get there. Any other ones? Yes?
How much time was he in Haiti? I thought it was pretty short.
18 months. They did. He worked on it. It changed his life. Plus, he met Erika there. So he painted his remembrances there for decades, 4 decades. But from memory, yes. Although he did look at photographs that he took too, but he never painted them verbatim. Okay, are we good? All right, thank you very much. Thank you so much.